Okay.
Okay. Better late than never, you guys.
Technical difficulties there.
Just a little bit. Nothing we can't get over, huh, Ray?
That's right.
Okay, so I am Linda Deir, and I'm going to be reading to you. What are you saying to me, Ray? Okay, I'm not going to listen to that. I'm Linda Deir, and I'm going to be reading to you today from chapter 18 of Guided. Her spirit guide angels were her best friends and life coaches. Available on Amazon in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook format. And I read the audiobook myself. All right. Okay. Last or 2 weekends ago, I read to you from chapter 17 of Guided. Dad dies mysteriously. One evening, about 5 months after Steve and I settled in Sacramento, we were eating dinner when the phone rang. I was just letting it ring when suddenly I got a strong message from my guides that I needed to answer it. It was my older brother, Randy, who never called me. He told me Dad was in the hospital. Although Randy never said Dad was dying, I told him to let Mom know not to let him die before I got there. I dropped everything, and Steve and I went to the hospital, which took about 25 minutes. On my way to the hospital, I was wondering why I knew that he was going to die. Today, I will be reading to you from chapter 18 of Guided. My guides channel me in a new direction. So sit back and relax as I tell the story about, despite the dysfunction, my spirit guides took me on one journey after another that led me to a greater understanding of myself. Okay. Chapter 18. My guides channel me in a new direction. In 1988, our struggling subdivision was just about finished. The demands and threats of the homeowners we were building for had reached a crescendo. We managed them pretty well, as much as we could, but we were really getting sick of it. Plus, subcontractors were stealing from us at every opportunity. It was overwhelming. One day when Steve and I went to lunch, I had an anxiety attack. I couldn't catch my breath. Steve rushed me to the hospital right around the corner, the same hospital my dad died at just 5 years earlier. They gave me oxygen and told me it was due to stress. The doctor told me to go home and rest for at least 2 days. This was the first time in my life that I had hit a limit. Could this be the high price I paid for my energy, the downside of what my dad warned me about? At that moment on the hospital bed, Steve literally got in my face and told me that this was it. We were finished building houses. I agreed. I was completely out of energy. I had no resistance to change, and this was the buildup for what's coming next. After that brief discussion, Steve took me home and told the homeowners what had happened to me. After they heard that, they backed off of their unreasonable demands and ugly threats. For the rest of 1988, I continued designing homes for clients while Steve finished the project. The anxiety attack was a nudge from my guides that big changes were in motion. Knowing that we would not be building homes after this project, we took a trip to the Southwest. My friend Mary instigated this when she called and asked if we'd like to go along with her. New Mexico is what she had in mind. I wanted to go to Arizona, but Mary had her heart set on New Mexico, so off to the land of enchantment we all went. We hit that state in its monsoon season in the summer of 1988. Even so, it was a great vacation that was long overdue for Steve and I. It made us think about moving to the Southwest, but for now, it was just a time out and nothing more. Little did we know that this trip was pointing us toward our destiny. It's interesting how Mary played a part in this coming change. Once again, we were being guided. When we got home, many of the clients for whom I had done custom home designs for wanted us to build their new homes. Several $1 million in custom home projects were offered to us. They said they would wait as long as we needed, just as long as we would build their homes. Even though we needed to make money, Steve told them that we couldn't do it. He was committed to what he told me in the hospital that day. Life was good at my design studio as I received a constant flow of design clients. They all loved me. It was a total opposite of building their homes. I worked alone in peace and quiet. It was really a good time in my life. I was making a lot of money and loving every minute of it. The pressure was finally off. It had been years since Steve and I felt the pressure lift, and life was becoming effortless again. Things were falling into place. By the way, this is what guidance feels like. When your life is flowing and there's no hardship and you're not struggling and everything's just going along fine, you stepped into that zone. You stepped in to the guidance. One morning, as I was getting ready to go to the office, I took off the top of the toothpaste tube. And just before I put it down, I did a second double take, just to be sure where I had put it down. I felt that something was up. Then I brushed my teeth, and when I went back to pick up the top of the toothpaste, it was gone. In that moment, I said, "Okay, Mark, you can return it now." It instantly reappeared. I sensed him, or some prankster, was present, which proved to be right. He was playing with me, and it was his way of letting me know that he wasn't gone. He was everywhere. Awareness. Probably everyone can remember a similar moment. Yes, it's those from the other side letting you know that they are there. They are everywhere. By the way, they also have a sense of humor. In 1988, I was in the third year of going to evening dream classes. So much had happened, and those who were guiding me from beyond this world were even more advanced than ever. It turned out that everything throughout the year had been leading up to what was about to happen next in December of 1988. The anxiety attack I had, the decision to stop building homes, finishing the building project, going to the Southwest, and what I continued to learn in the non-physical worlds through my dreams and from my guides were going to all be part of this bigger picture that was about to emerge. That picture started to reveal itself when, in December of 1988, the teacher of my dream class invited me over for dinner. That was not like her. She was a good teacher, but we did not have a chummy relationship. I was aware she had many insecurities that were in direct contrast to her teachings. In other words, she didn't walk her talk. It turned out that the only reason she had me over to visit her was because she was faced with an ultimatum from her own guides that she and her friend had been channeling using a Ouija board. The dreaded Ouija board. Apparently, several weeks before she invited me over, her guides came through one of their sessions and told her they needed her to arrange a session with me because my guides had something to tell me. She agreed, but never followed through on it. A few weeks later, her guides told her that they would no longer be coming through for her until this session with me took place. She would be cut off from further communication with them until she performed on this. Of course, at that time, I had no idea she was a channel or that she had been cut off from her guides. So I was baffled when after dinner, she brings out the Ouija board, tosses a pad and paper and pen at me and told me to start writing as she and her friend started channeling the information. She did this strictly out of obligation, so she would have access to her guides again. The information came through very fast as they got right to the point, the guides. In this session, my guides gave me a name to use when contacting them in the future. It was a very unusual name. In fact, it's a name I've never told anybody except for Ray. No one knows the name to this day. Nobody knows. They told me about my job, about the job I needed to do, and described it in a way I would understand the importance of performing on it. They asked me to create a new talking board, one that did not cause fear and caution, so people would have a way to contact their own guides as their lives became more uncertain in the years ahead. Look what we're in right now, you guys. Look what's going on in the world. Look at all the lying and the manipulation that's going on. What do you believe? How do you know what to believe? That's why they asked me to create this. I realized this was something I had been shown to me right from the start of my life, coming from the merry-go-round dream, that my job would be to help the ones who could be reached. This new board would be how they could reach their guides without fear. Then they told me that I would be leaving the Sacramento area. I had lived there my whole life. I was 1988. I was 36 years old in 1988. They suggested I move to Colorado, but also told me I would decide to move to a neighboring state instead. I moved to Arizona. I did visit Colorado and considered Colorado, but I moved to Arizona, so they were right about that. But what's interesting is they suggested that I move to Colorado. I wonder how things would have worked out if I only listened to that guidance. I'll never know. They told me about an earthquake that was coming that would devastate Northern California. Now, this was in December of 1988, remember. They said that my thriving architectural practice would be coming to an end because of a recession that would start the end of 1989 and continue through 1991. And boy, did that come to pass. And so did the earthquake. The earthquake also came to pass. It was actually the playoffs. What is it called for the baseball people when they have their final game?
Playoffs.
Well, it's called something else,
Oh,
but
World Series?
the World Series in Oakland, California in 1989. That's when that earthquake happened. Do you guys remember that? So they warned me about it December of 1988, that was coming. They also told me to leave Steve. They said our marriage would not work out. Sounds like a replay. That's exactly what happened when I was 19 years old. And they told me husband number one wouldn't work out and to find my own way. See how this works? This guidance is amazing. Steve was present at this channeling session and heard every word of this. After hearing that, he laid down on the floor on his back and went right to sleep. That's what happens when somebody can't handle the information. He simply couldn't handle what he had heard or anything else they were about to say. After the session with my dream teacher, I started having dreams showing me the details of what my guides needed me to do to create their version of a talking board that would not perpetuate the fear and concern attached to Ouija boards. By March of 1989, my board was designed, the trademark was filed, and it was scheduled for production. This went really quickly. That's another thing about guidance. When it's coming from your guidance and you act on it, everything moves faster than if you did what you thought was important and followed your own plan, okay? Between December of 1988 and March of 1989, I honed my channeling skills by observing and practicing with my dream teacher and her friends. Doing this also allowed me to test the prototypes of this new talking board, which everyone loved. Throughout this learning and discovery time, we all made contact with many benevolent groups of beings. It would take an entire book to cover what happened in these channeling sessions. Let's just say that I was well prepared for what was coming next. I had a direct line of communication with my guides and many others anytime I wanted to contact them on command. My world was really opening up. Tip: do you see how fast things can change when you let go? This is a perfect example of it in my life. It was less than a year earlier that I had an anxiety attack, which resulted in my no longer building homes. We just have to be willing to let go and trust. Stay open and pay attention to the smallest events, because your guides are always working on what is best for you, and they will never let you down. Unlike other people I knew, including Steve, I was never scared by any of this otherworldly communication because I had been groomed for it throughout my life. I was thoroughly prepared for all of it. These benevolent beings were not new to me because I always had access to them. Now I had a direct line of communication with them through this new talking board device and could reach them on command. To me, this was second nature. I expect that this is why they came to me to join forces with them in developing this project. They knew I had what it would take to see it through: the design ability, the organizational and teaching skills, and a deep rapport with them from a lifelong relationship. The dream class teacher and her followers who became channelers of this new talking board were invested in having the smartest guides that only they had access to. By the way, that's never true. They were ego-driven and domineering. Of course, this is self-defeating because that approach was in complete opposition to what is necessary when accessing high sources and bring through unbiased information. Nobody owns beings on the higher planes. I just let those people go on thinking that they were superior. They never understood what was really happening. They showed me the ugly side of this precious communication with higher intelligence. It was really disappointing to see that. I used the time with these amateur channelers to work through my learning curve and perfect the performance of this new talking board. So I kept the good stuff and left the rest behind. Remember that, you guys. Don't take it personally. Take the good stuff and leave the rest behind. It took me 8 months from January to August to complete all the learning I would need, along with finishing the refinement and production of this new talking board. The learning was easy. It was an interaction of egos that jostled for the highest position as they competed with, my guides are better than your guides. Power play that made it tedious. I remember how hard that was to put up with. I just went, oh, please tell me that this is not going to happen where I'm going to move to next. All right. As ridiculous as this sounds, it was just as important for me to experience this than anything else, because after all, I would be teaching it. Okay. So I had to know that this was the weak side, the folly that would probably exist most of the time when people first bumped into this powerful communication tool. I mean, powerful. That behavior was childish. I thought I would see the last of it once Steve and I left for Arizona. Little did I know that this ego-driven competition would be a common shortfall with almost everyone I would be training. There it is. People who could master the skill of channeling higher information almost always polluted it with their egos. I seemed to be the only one who understood that it was the value of the information and not who brought it through that really mattered. Over time, I found that in the very beginning, new channelers tended to be open and humble, though not gullible. That's the perfect attitude for working with your guides. No matter if you're working with the talking board or you're just channeling your guides or you're writing down your dreams and you're connecting with your dreams, that's the right attitude. However, once they became proficient at using the talking board, they almost always fell into the trap of self-importance. That's where everything goes wrong. They acted like it was they who were bringing through the wisdom and timely information. When that happened, they were no longer channeling higher intelligence from others. They were channeling their egos. This came from their need to be right. Watch that in your life. Anytime you feel like you need to be right, and you defend it to the bitter end. You need to be right, and you argue with people, and you just won't listen to anybody. Watch that. That puts you out of sequence, out of touch with your guidance. You're on your own when you do that. This came from their need to be right, to dominate and control. Right? So watch that. Awareness. Be aware that this also happens a lot when people get intuitive messages. They instantly think it came from them when it came through them from their guides. It always comes from your guides. It's important to recognize that so you can begin to open up your line of communication with them. Their job is to guide you so you can lead an authentic life. They are not interested in the superficial stuff. Okay? All right. So you guys, next Saturday, September 12th at 1 p.m. Pacific time, I will be reading to you from chapter 19 of Guided. The connection to my guides shifts into high gear. In March of 1989, Steve and I went back to the Southwest to investigate a possible move Our strategy was to get the talking board finished and ready for sale, complete with instructions on how to use it. That way, we would have something which to start our new life. Of course, we were clueless about marketing or how the project or how a project like it would even work out. There. Ugh. All right. So until then, remember, you have help. You are never alone and always being guided.